You are stupid. I am not stupid. Hey Z, nice to talk to you again. I am sitting here kind of recovering from the effects of a little springtime cold that I've got, so I'm a little hoarse. Really interesting listening to your last comments and video. I was kind of, that David Foster video I posted, I was kind of disappointed to hear your comments on that. I was, boy, it was like I swung for the fences and struck out. I thought that there was something there. I thought there was something there with his idea that our default setting is to be self-centered, and that we should try to break away from that. I felt like there was something there. I don't know. I guess there wasn't. But let's move on to your subject that you were talking about. Social media, the influencers, how influencers are bullshit. I really like this. We've talked about this before. One of the things that struck me immediately, excuse me. Sorry. Do excuse me. One of the things that struck me when you were talking about Real Player and how you were one of the first people to start uploading content and kind of doing that. And you really were. And for anybody that's watching this video, I was literally there with him while he was doing this 30 years ago. 30 years, yeah, almost 30 years ago. Like, that I watched you start doing this. I was literally with you when you started doing this. And the one thing that struck me is that, boy, sometimes it's not good to be the first person to do something. Sometimes it's best to be the second or third person to do something. Kind of seems to be an interesting thing in this case. But yeah, social media, influencers, it's an interesting phenomenon that has arisen, I think, because what social media has done, what Facebook has done, what Twitter has done, what TikTok, all that shit has done, it has allowed crazy people to have a voice. It's allowed the fringes of our society to somehow, in some limited way, well, excuse me, not in some limited way, sometimes in a very big way, to actually have a voice. And we're all not created equal. We are not. Sometimes you see success in the most unlikely of places, and sometimes you see failure in the most unlikely of places. And what divides it? What divides success from failure is a very certainly, at the very least, certainly a very gray line. I watched a video with Sam Harris, and he was interviewing it was a guy. It was him and Mark Zuckerberg. They had started Facebook together, and they were two peas in a pod, so to speak. This guy was second in command, and he ended up leaving Facebook in part because of, he didn't like the direction the company was going, what they were doing with engineered consent. And he made a really interesting point during this interview, and he said, you could take any town in America, you could pick anywhere, any town in America, didn't matter if it was small, didn't matter if it was a city, and you give us 1 week, and we could literally have people out in the streets with pitchforks and torches. We could literally, we could do it. You pick anywhere, pick any cause, and that was how direct our influence was over people with engineered consent. Like, we could literally make people do anything that we wanted to. It's really interesting that trying to convince a single person to do something, it's not as easy as convincing a group of people to do something. You can convince a group of people to do something much easier. It's mob mentality. And what happens is that when you convince a group of people to do something, it becomes self-reinforcing. So you don't even necessarily have to play a part anymore. The mob will continue to reinforce itself in a way that an individual person, it won't happen. So, engineered consent. Eisenhower, the rise of the military industrial complex. Eisenhower warned us about it. And it's not something new. Like, you don't see, it's not something new. And engineered consent is not something new. I mean, you saw this back in the 40s and 50s. This is why marijuana is illegal. William Randolph Hearst, yellow journalism, engineered consent, getting people to believe a certain thing out of paranoia, out of a sense of patriotic this, or a sense of family values that, tampering with the way people think by the information that they are fed through whatever media that they have access to. Excuse me. Excuse me. So yeah, it's not something new. This is not a new idea. It's just that Facebook, Google, Twitter they've just amplified this to an exponential degree. What do you do about it? What do you do about it? Well, we've said this before. We've had this talk before. You said it in your last video. Number one, the most important thing is to realize that it is happening. It is happening. And the more you think it's not happening, the more you think that you're immune to it, the more it's happening. Right? You cannot escape it. The second you sign up for an email account, you don't even have to have a Facebook account. The second you start using the internet, there is an algorithm that is created that is going to follow you for the rest of your life, and it is going to tailor the information that you receive when you are on the internet. You have to understand that this is happening. I would say, and Z, you really refined this, I would say that in addition to realizing that this is what's happening, not so much embrace it and make it a part of you. Not so much that, but use what they give you. Use the tools. Use what they for free. Use the tools that they give you for free. Use them. Make use of them. If you're going to be part of that culture, you actually use what they give you and try to do something good with it. Z, you actually really refined this. You went a step further. Not just to use what they give you, but use what they give you against them. Right? Use what they give you, excuse me. Use what they give you against them. And that is really the crux of what we're trying to accomplish right now. Right? We are trying to be the masters of our robot overlords. And we are trying to break free of the Matrix. I don't know if anybody here has ever watched the movie The Matrix. There was a scene in there that I thought was really interesting. It was right at the very end. And if you've never watched The Matrix, you probably this will probably miss you. But right at the very end of the movie, the main character, he finally meets the computer that has created the Matrix. And the computer tells him, when I first created the Matrix for people, it was a perfect utopia. It was a perfect utopia. Everybody was happy. Everybody was rich. Everybody was wealthy. Everybody was happy and healthy and had lots of money and lots of possessions. And it didn't work. It didn't work. The whole thing broke down. And I had to redesign the Matrix so that it had misery in it and it had problems in it. Because if you didn't, the whole thing broke down. And I think that there is an interesting thing to be said there about equality and how we're trying to strive for equality with people and for everything to be the same. Every person on the planet Earth should enjoy the same level of enjoyment and the same level of resources. Like we should all be equal. And I question whether not only whether this is something that is actually a good thing, but also, more importantly, whether it's even possible. Equality is not sameness. Things can be equal and still not be the same. Apples are not equal to oranges. It doesn't mean that apples are better than oranges or oranges are better than apples. It means that they are not the same. And should we struggle? How much energy should we spend struggling to make things the same when they're not? And how do we reconcile? Perhaps reconcile is not the best word. Excuse me. How do we reconcile our idea of equality with sameness? Because obviously we're not all the same, but yet we do all want to be equal. We want equal outcome. We want equal benefits. We want equal opportunity, but we're not all the same. You have people out there who think that if you're an atheist, you should be killed. You have people out there who think that if you're religious, you should be killed. We're not all the same. We're not all equal. And so where do you find the balance there in trying to create the best possible good for all people while avoiding the worst possible misery for all people? And how does, because social media influencing it, it's just, all it is a bigger word for how we relate to each other. It's like the telephone. It's like the telephone or the fax machine. It's just a bigger example of, and more of an example of how we relate to each other and how we communicate with each other. How do we control this in such a way that we derive benefit from it as opposed to it destroys us? Z, you've made this point very well. You use it for creativity. You use the tools that they give you to try to break down who they are. You use their tools against them. But if you do that, like, what are you left with? Like, what is the end game? Like, what are we aiming for here? So I think I'm going to leave it at that for right now. I'm a little foggy. I've taken some cold medicine. I'm a little sick. So hopefully this video enlightens you. Z, thank you as always for your input and for responding to our conversations. I'm not stupid. I am not stupid. You are stupid. Hey, girl.